Welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Second hour of the program. Our next guest needs no introduction. Stephen Bronfman is in studio. Hi, Stephen. How
Elias,
are you?
Nice to be here.
It's great to have you in studio, and thank you for being generous with your time this morning.
Right on.
I said no introduction. I said I have Canadian business person, that kind of stuff. How do you let's say you're on vacation somewhere, and you end up at the bar of the resort or at a whatever, and you start talking to someone from across the world. And what do you do? What do you tell that person?
Well, I keep things low key. I'm a pretty humble person. I don't like to sort of flag wave or anything. I think I grew up that way, always kind of being humble, always wanting to be kind of like the guy next door.
Yeah.
It's an interesting way, but not the easiest way to grow up. A lot of people say, "Oh, silver spoon," blah blah blah. It took a while to find my way.
Yeah.
To turn into my own person, a lot of big shoes to fill, grandfather, father, industrialists, doing all this great stuff. Dad starting the Expos, chairman of Seagram. What am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Dad was always cool. He just let me be me. He said, son, whatever it is that you're going to do, just do the best you can do.
And how do you view that for the next generation? How do you tackle that, right? If you want, how do you think people who maybe they've got wealth in the family, how should they treat it if they're talking about their kids? How do you foster that without, giving them too much or not enough? Like, how do you judge?
I think the humble key is the best. I think people are people, right? And respect is due all across the board, to the guy, who's having a tough time living on the streets, to the guy that's in the C-suite running big business. I mean, treat people with respect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the big projects and what you've decided to spend your time with. Because I am also involved in the baseball Expos community and I worked for the team, I'll start off with baseball because it is interesting for me. Would you say you came really close?
Yeah, really, really, really close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember being part of that, being on the press conference, the
Right.
Zoom call.
Oh yeah, at the end.
At
in
the
December
end.
last year.
Yeah, and I don't remember ever seeing your face like that. You seemed like really down. Like this was.
Yeah, Stuart Sternberg, who's the owner of the Rays and managing partner, he gave me a heads up a few days earlier that he thought things were feeling funny. So it was it was an amazing story. The build, the whole process, the fact that, we had this potential partner that was, I would say among the best operators in that business. Montreal coming out of the difficult time that it did, lost the team, and then I'm the guy that's sort of waving the flag. The idea of this shared city, sister city concept de-risked a lot of issues. It's a long season.
162
right?
games, 6
months. It's a long season. So the idea, a lot of people thought it was a bit out there, but the idea of having baseball in Montreal, live baseball from right after Grand Prix to the end of the season.
Yeah.
It was really easy. It made a lot of sense. And it made a lot of sense for the families. And Stuart was, really politicking the players and the coaches of the Rays. And they all actually were like, you know what? Kids are out of school. Wives like the idea. Montreal's a lot more cosmopolitan than Tampa. Let's give it a try. They liked the idea. So they would have had spring training, and they would have played up to sort of, say, 10th, 12th of June and move up north. So one move.
Was the hang up the other owners of Major League Baseball saying, wait a minute, you don't get two markets. You got to stick with one. Was that what happened?
It was funny, and, it's assumptions for me. Nothing was actually told directly. I mean, there were a lot of assumptions, and I spoke about it a bit in the Gazette article. I mean, I got friendly with a lot of the writers, like Shai Davidi, from Toronto. He's kind of like the Ken Rosenthal to baseball of Canada. And I asked him, and he had an interesting theory, thinking that, he's like, geez, Stuart is so smart. He's done so well with so little. He says, I think a lot of these guys are scared of him. And I think that giving him that sort of extra market and that boost that he would get in revenue, it's like, well, why does he get that? Baseball is broken up into 3 sectors, right? You have the haves, the so-sos, and the have-nots. And the have-nots, there's revenue sharing, but the league doesn't love doling out $60, $70 million a year to Tampa. They like the idea of this. And I mentioned Pittsburgh and you have small markets out there, Cleveland and Kansas, and these guys would love to have this.
And here's my thing:
Yeah.
when they reject that idea of splitting the team,
It'll
into
happen
two
at some
cities,
point.
You think?
I think it's the future of a lot of sport. I mean, what do you bring? You bring more eyeballs.
Yeah.
You bring more fans.
Yeah.
So fans buy. Fans will wager more, so that's good for that market, which I'm not a big fan of, but, that is a new market. They buy more merch, more eyeballs. I mean, it's only good.
Do you think, because, part of me wants to think of Montreal as quote unquote major league, big league city, just in general, not just about baseball. And part of my worry is, oh, geez, maybe the messaging here is Montreal is too small to support a baseball team full time. Was that ever plan B? Okay, if they don't go with split season,
no, that
was
actually plan A. Was trying to get. I assumed that Tampa was just not working out, and that's why Stewart reached out.
Yeah.
And then he came with this other plan that took a little while to digest. My dad never really. He's like, "What? Who are people going to root for? How's that going to work?" And there's a lot of that. No, Montreal's a major league city, and that's why we're here. We're doing tons of stuff, business, philanthropically, community wise, really trying to prop the city up because it is, we all grew up. Well, I'm a bit older than you are, but City of Champions, Ted Teven, Olympics, and then onward from that. I mean, it was glory days, and the city still has a lot of swagger. It has a lot of people. So when you're looking at when baseball is looking at markets, especially for expansion, Montreal by far is the larger.
We have lots of bodies.
We have one thing that's a bit of a knock is we have a Canadian dollar, so it makes it a lot more expensive for people to run a business here. And I don't think, the Blue Jays do a decent job. I don't think the league is ready to do sort of a parity on currency. So there's that risk for sure.
So keeping that in mind, there's going to be expansion eventually in baseball.
There will be.
Would you be part of that? Would you say, hey, you know what, let's go for a full expansion team?
I mean, is it going to happen? There's going to be expansion, and I can't support a team like that. I mean, it's not the same. The dollars are crazy, right?
It's crazy, right?
And so we don't have whales in Montreal. I mean, there's some big shooters, and there's people that could step up. But a lot of times, people don't.
So if there's no big, if the dollar signs in baseball are so astronomical, talking like $2 billion plus just to get the team, right? Then you've got to build a stadium. And if individuals here in Montreal can't do it, who does it? Is it a big corporation?
There's a big list. There's corporations. There are some individuals. I mean, you cobble it together. You don't want to get into the Loria situation, but there are people in the U.S. that are just looking at these properties. The sports business has become really a mega business. Yeah. So there are people, finance people that just look at this and say, wow. And the way you mentioned expansion fees, the way these fees go up. I mean, look at Steve Ballmer. He paid $2 billion for the Clippers, and people were laughing. They're like, whoa. They're going to go into expansion after they renew their media deal in a couple of years. And I'm friendly with Larry Tannenbaum from Toronto, from MLSE, and he thinks that expansion fees are going to be in the $4 to $5 billion for NBA. That's just to get a license, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's just crazy. To enter the league. Nothing else. None of that stuff involved. Just on the work that you did to design a baseball field. Right, and we saw some.
Well, it wasn't my work; it was Populous. Well, they did a pretty good job.
But
when it's exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting, right? Now, is that stuff the work that was done there? Can it be repurposed for a future effort, or? Well,
I think. Listen, if you're going for a full expansion team, I think you need a covered stadium. The beauty of the Tampa deal was you'd have baseball here from mid-June to the end of September, right? Then it might get a little fresh in the evenings, but and the expense, when you look at covering a stadium, you've got to put all this piling and all this reinforcement in the upper decks, which are your cheap seats. So the revenue coming in from all that added expense is not big. And that cost of look, we know about roofs, right? Yeah. It's big costs. And you look at what stadiums are being built for these days south of the border, it's astronomical. Big we're not building a SoFi stadium for $5 billion, right?
All right, continuing our conversation with Stephen Bronfman. Stephen, thanks for sticking around here. I want to talk about economy for a bit, okay? Because I think you got your finger on the pulse. How do you view Montreal's economy?
It's an interesting question. I think things have been tough in general post-COVID, right? COVID was horrible, not just for Montreal, for Canada, for everywhere. Business business was not bad for many industries during COVID, and then took a funny downturn afterwards. People were happy. Everyone started coming back to work. Productivity was up, everything. But all of a sudden there's this sluggishness. And, if you look at the markets in general, not everyone can play in the markets, but the markets in generally, U.S. based are strong.
Yeah, really strong.
And not as strong here, right? So a lot of times Canada is kind of the tail of the dog, right? And that tail hopefully starts wagging a little bit. We're seeing some pickup. Commercial real estate, whatnot, is starting to move, but cities are slow, expenses are high, cost of living is high. Everyone's kind of, you look at the supermarkets and just pricing in general, commodities are expensive. Cost of living is expensive. So there's a lot of anxiety out there. I think, we don't see the earning power of the average Canadian going up quick enough. We see the cost of living going up, and it's a big world out there. Some people are, working several jobs. They sit at home, right? They have a lot of contracts and starting to make some more money. But in general, I think we're going through a very slow period. And there's light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a slow one.
How much do you think it's politics comes into play here, right? And I'm thinking, for Montreal, everyone says we got to build housing. We got to build housing. And I hear from a whole bunch of people that we're doing as much as possible to stop housing from being built at times, right? Like developers, I hear complaints from developers and the like. So what do you think? How are we handling that?
The permitting process is pretty slow,
and
has gotten slower. I think housing is a very important sort of indicator, especially when you look at the U.S. and you watch NBC News or whatnot. They always, when the economy turns, they start looking at housing because, you're talking about buying power, you're talking about building, you're talking about commodities, you're talking about many things in one. So housing is a big issue. And, I don't want to jump into politics here, but take a place like a huge space like the Olympic Basin, right? The Olympic Stadium area. I mean, geez, could build a lot of housing there, instead of spending $1 billion on a roof
so is that
to a place that nobody goes.
Is that disappointing for you to see that the Quebec government is still like, we're going to spend billions after billions?
I don't understand the decision. I mean, we have a lot of infrastructural issues around our city, and I don't see that the $1 billion, they say 870. We all know that 870 means 1.2 billion or whatnot. I mean, is that really the right way to spend that money?
And that's just for one part of the work that needs to be done, not the whole thing, right?
It costs $40 to $50 million a year just to duct tape the Big O to keep the doors open. We were looking at what to do with that when earlier days of baseball. It's a pretty big white elephant, and you know what? It was built for the Olympics. That was a long time ago. Look at stadiums and what's happening across the U.S. I mean, they're knocking these things down. They're repurposing.
Yeah, and with that in mind, what's happening in the U.S., and I'm trying to juxtapose what's happening in Canada and what's happening in the U.S. I feel like wealth creation is sort of booming south of the border, and here it's almost become a bad thing in certain respects. And I don't know if you see the same thing that I see when I look at what's happening, projects that are happening in other U.S. cities, and I compare it here where we sort of seem stagnant. And we're like, okay, let's just throw another $1 billion into the Olympic Stadium instead of thinking about new facilities, new things.
The U.S. economy is 10 times the size, or the population and the economy, right? 10 times what Canada is. Canada is still a great place to live. It's safe. We have a great social net. I'm a big believer and a big fan in Canada. I grew up with an American mother and a Canadian father. I went to university in the U.S., and at 22 years old, I discovered then. I was like, wow, I am Canadian, and I've spent the rest of my life here in Canada. And so I'm a big fighter and proponent of Canada. But you're right, the project size and scale is smaller, and the dollar spend is smaller. So, we have different tax rates. We have different ways of spending dollars corporately, and it's just a different way of doing business. But I think there's a lot of potential upside. Look at what's happening in Quebec, for instance, in the battery business. We're leading. If you listen to François-Philippe Champagne, he's super bullish. I mean, Canada is leading the charge. I mean, that deal that they just did in Ontario for Honda is massive, and Canada is going to be leading. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities, especially in sort of the new economy, green economy. I think there's a lot of potential, and I think we're just starting to tap into it.
Or do we think big enough? Are we thinking big enough in this country, in this city?
No, we never do.
How do we change that?
It's mentality, but you know what? It's also oftentimes politics. We need a pat on the back. You buy an electric car, right? And you get 12 grand back from the government.
Yeah.
That feels good.
Yeah.
So rebates are important and policy is important. So, taking a bigger picture view is really important, longer term. We do have some issues called deficit, tax rates, whatnot. Where is the money going to come from? I think we're pretty heavily taxed federally and provincially and municipally as is, and I don't see that going backwards. But people are working hard, and it's a tough grind out there.
There's an open letter published this morning in Le Devoir from Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois, leader of Quebec Solidaire, and he tries to make the case that what this province needs is to head more left. Right? He's looking at the situation with schools and education and climate change. And he says it's time to try a true leftist option in the province. I know he's trying to save his job as well at the same time. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I grew up a little more left of center. I'm sort of on the both sides, sort of center left. Yeah. But I think we need to push forward, and we need to grow the economy. Grow the economy by spending it, not by reducing it.
So why? Like, what are we failing at? Like, we need to grow the economy. What do you think the people that are currently in power are doing not well, that needs to be readjusted here?
No, I don't like to criticize, but it's so if you look at Canada versus U.S., one of the reasons my dad started something called the Heritage Minutes was he always felt that Americans were just a lot more bullish in general than Canadians. So you walk down the street in New York, hey, Bill, how you doing? Oh, I'm great. How are you, Ted? Oh, great. All right, good to see you. You walk down in Montreal, hey, how you doing, John?
Yeah.
He goes, not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad. So it's a different mentality, right?
Yeah.
We're a bit more socialist. We're a bit more reserved, a little less maybe of that go-for-it attitude. But there's so much good. We have such a great resource-based economy. There is a lot of business to do, and it's cyclical, right? We're just sort of on a bit of a downturn, and that will propel. The world is moving. It's not going backwards.
No worries that Canada's lagging behind.
Listen, things are slow-ish in this last little while, this sort of post-COVID world. But I talk to the guys that sort of run the big infrastructure funds and the big sort of real estate funds, and they're actually feeling pretty good. So, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We have a big C2 conference.
Yes, talk to me about
starting the
that.
next couple of days. I'm going there right after here. My wife is chair. It's a big deal because it's commerce, creativity. It's really sort of the tomorrow of business, right? And that's really important because you have creative minds, you have people assembling, coming together, looking at the economy and saying, where can we go from here? And so I think it's a really, really important conference for the city. We hosted, people come from all over states, from all over Canada, and it's really sort of, I would say, our Canadian TED talk kind of thing in 3 days. And so a lot of smart people, a lot of great ideas, kind of looking at these issues, maybe from more of a tech and more of a sort of creativity point of view.
So what is the future of business? Is it that? Is it artificial intelligence, everything?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about creativity, right? It's about thinking differently. I mean, and back to C2, a couple of years ago, there was one of probably the number 2 guy at Google came up and gave a talk, and he said, when he got asked a question about hiring, and he said, listen, I'm not looking for MBAs. I'm not looking for Masters of Business Associate. I'm looking for MFAs. I'm looking for Master of Fine Arts because I'm looking for thinkers. He said, I can always hire a numbers person. He goes, I want people that know how to create, think creatively. And I think we have a great creative community here. I think Montreal is known as a creative city. Quebec is a creative province. So the creativity will figure out a way to propel and to move forward. And
Stephen, enjoy your time at C2.
oh, thank you, Elias.
Thanks for coming by.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's really great to have you in the
Nice to
studio.
be in this radio suite. It's really cool.
When was the last time you were here?
Jeez, I've been across the street to RDS TSN, but sometimes I call in. But you guys were nice to call me in today, so
Wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
Nice talking with you.
Appreciate it. That's
Cheers.
Stephen Bronfman, Montreal businessman.